he would like. So it was just kind of, just a cool common ground, you know what I mean?
All right, Andy Hurley, dedicated to his mom. I think he does everything for her. I think it's great. I knew him a lot more than, you know, or hung out with him a lot more than I did with Pete and Joe, because he was always like hanging out with the same people I was hanging out with, playing in the same bands, going to the same shows and stuff.
Yeah, Andy, but he'd always be in Racine, hanging out with my friends. Like, I'd run into him hanging out over at Jarrett's house, or actually my ex-girlfriend knew him pretty well too. She was in love with that guy, and when he got famous, she was all starstruck. Oh, I knew a famous guy, you know. It's pretty hilarious.
Joe, he was born rich, Jewish, liked him. We had some heart-to-hearts on the Arma Angeles tour. It was kind of nice. He was a good guy, liked him a lot.
I know Joe through Arma Angeles. He was in Arma Angeles with Pete. He played guitar bass. He played bass on tour with Arma Angeles. They used to pick on him every day. It was very funny. I remember one tour we went on down south into Florida and stuff, and they ripped every pair of underwear he had. He had given him wedgies every day and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. He was young. He was, I think, maybe just like 18 at the time and stuff like that. I think it was at that house that I went out in the van. I'm like, man, it stinks in our van. And I found like an old open thing of like tuna that Pete had hidden in our van, and it sat in there for like a day and a half. Oh man, yeah, that tuna was raw, man. That was raw.
I was in Arma Angeles' van because I didn't want to ride with my van anymore. We were outside of a Walmart, and that's one thing that Pete always was picking on Joe. Always giving him wedgies, like bad wedgies, like ripping his underwear, and he didn't do anything. He was just like, oh man, why is this happening to me? But we were outside of a Walmart. Pete, you can just see when he gets a really funny idea in his head. He's just like, and he tells Joe, go out there and steal this big inflatable shark. And he was like, all right, yeah. And he stopped the car, gets out, grabs his thing, and he starts running back to the van. And the driver just pulls off.
Okay, I lost the camera.
And Joe's sitting, running down the parking lot with this huge inflatable shark. And we're all just laughing at him hysterically, just driving.
The fun-loving nature of Fall Out Boy, combined with their lively performances, witty lyrics, and poster boy looks, have encouraged an extremely dedicated fan base. Their pop culture references and willingness to engage with fans with a strong web presence through MySpace and personal blogs gives them an especially large appeal to trend-spotting teenagers.
Being on stage seconds before they come on stage and having the privilege to announce them, like right before they come on stage, it was very amazing. The crowd is, I hate to say it, and I don't know how they feel, but it's
kids, young people,
13-year-old girls.
As far as I can tell, it's like people under 18.
12-year-old girls.
From late junior high kids, you know, 7th, 8th grade through seniors in college.
14-year-old girls. They write good music, they write clever music. Music, I think, that may be too advanced for 14-year-old girls to be singing along to. I think looking out and watching those girls sing some of those lyrics and knowing all the words, and if you stop and think about what Pat's singing, it's not something that I'd want my 13-year-old daughter singing to.
When I talked to Patrick on the phone in the spring, he was very sensitive towards, you know, putting out the right vibe as far as to their fans of what they should and should be doing. He doesn't like that there's, you know, jocks from way back at hardcore shows still coming and then, you know, making asses of themselves in the mosh pits and throwing elbows and things like that. He's like, those guys are always going to be there, and there's no way to discourage that. And that's kind of one thing he wished that they could avoid.
The role that they play with the music is one similar to Cliff Notes, right? So you have all these 15-year-old people who aren't familiar with like punk rock and the old, you know, old hardcore and all this stuff, and probably wouldn't be interested in it unless someone could kind of condense it and hand it to them in a prettier package.
And he also he told me he didn't like that girls felt the need to flash their breasts at them at shows. He doesn't understand it, he doesn't recommend it, And I think they try to, you know, put themselves forward as people who don't want that. They're not going to start inviting girls backstage for, you know, Dionysus and Motley Crue-ish activities.
So it seems like a lot of like pop punk and pop, you know, hard like screamo, hardcore emo stuff that's happening nowadays. That's really popular. Is just that it's all these ideas that are kind of repackaged and then distributed to someone who wouldn't necessarily be interested in if it weren't presented in a prettier fashion.
They're on MTV. They have legions of teenage fans, and the teenage crowd isn't always given its due for finding good stuff, even though it more than often than not does.
There is similar things that I would listen to at that age too. It's like, you know, that I can see why it's very appealing. You know, I mean, I think it's an energetic type of music. It's easily accessible. It's not too abrasive. It's very, you know, it's you know, like some older forms of punk rock were a little rough, you know, and go back to the attitude thing. It was more just about just being outrageous than it was actually music, you know.
There's a lot of different ways that they can be viewed. You know, there's going to be the hardcore elitists who don't like anything that's successful and popular, you know, and those people just really can't really be satisfied on any level usually. You know, they always have to go and find something that nobody else knows about. And then there's the people who are just general music fans, you know, and even people who have been with them for a while who are really excited about the success that they're having. And, you know, every record they put out, there's some really catchy songs that even if you don't like that style of music.
Oh man, everybody loves Fall Out Boy. Who doesn't? My little sister, who's just turned 13, that's her favorite band. But most people I know can't deny it. There's like you know, 40-year-old guy that I work with at my day job at the design agency I work at. He loves that band. You know, his nephew loves that band. A lot of my friends love that band. My ex-girlfriend loves that band.
You know, but these guys actually play well, you know. So, and you know, good production and everything else. So it's very easily to digest music, and so, and that's why I think, you know, for guys and girls, you know, I know when I was a teenager, we were not listening to the same thing. Very few, you know. It's like girls were into this kind of thing, guys were into this kind of thing, you know, because.
And on this last record, there were a bunch of songs that I really liked, you know, that personally, outside of just playing them on the show, I would listen to. And in Chicago, they've developed into such a, it's kind of like a cult of personality thing, especially around Pete. You know, there's so many girls who are just completely so enthralled with the idea of Fall Out Boy and Pete Wentz, and that's totally understandable.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like Fall Out Boy, except for maybe some of the underground press, like Punk Planet kind of rips on them, but you know, aside from, you know, the haters, I think everybody likes Fall Out Boy. Who doesn't?
And years ago, it was Billy Corgan in this city, you know, and everybody had a story about how they knew somebody who knew Billy Corgan growing up, or they were in a class with him, and now it's the same thing. You talk to anybody, you know, at the Metro or any show you go to, and Fall Out Boy comes up, and they go, oh, you know, my cousin went to school with him, or he used to date my ex-girlfriend, or, you know, everybody wants to claim that they have a piece of the story now.
The girls think the guys are cute, and the guys think, you know, the music rocks and stuff, so I think everyone that's young can get into this kind of stuff.
I like Fall Out Boy. I know a ton of people who like Fall Out Boy. I know a ton of people who like Fall Out Boy but won't admit it, and I know a ton of people who will come forth and wear Fall Out Boy shirts and go to their concerts.
A surge in popularity has given Fall Out Boy a highly visible profile. And with fans eager for more, Pete in particular has been quick to recognise the potential for other activities in addition to the band. Ever the entrepreneur, he has shown remarkable business savvy in setting up a variety of Fall Out Boy side projects.
They've got a lot of different things that they're doing. They have a clothing line, they've got a record label, they've got toys. I might be imagining this, but I think there's talks about some kind of movie deal thing, and if there isn't yet, I'm sure that there will be. I
think Pete's ability to expand out into clothing with like clandestine industries and all that stuff, and I think he published a book that he wrote and had hired somebody to illustrate. I don't know. I think that's amazing. Again, that just shows that dude's brilliance, because you know, what happens when Fall Out Boy is done? He's got to set himself up with other business maneuvers, like record labels. He's got his record label, Panic at the Disco. It's just like huge right now. You know, that band's on everybody's lips.
It's incredibly smart. You don't really attribute that sort of ambition to musicians because they've got to